This Tyco C430 is very weird and very broken, and today I will be trying to fix it. Now, a test run. Last time I tried to run this thing, it didn't work at all. It just had headlights, which is something kind of cool about this locomotive, which I'll show you when I try and run this thing. But I'll give it some power, and apparently it runs now. I was not aware of it being functional, but I guess that makes my life a little bit easier. Try it in reverse, and it stalled. But I don't know how well you can see this, but this locomotive for a Tyco has directional lighting, which means someone had to have installed this. So I'm kind of curious about what's actually been done to this locomotive. Now that it's decided it's less broken, I'm going to have less diagnosis work to do, which is great. Overall, this unit looks to be in really good shape cosmetically. It's not fully why I bought it, but it's really not awful. It's got every single handrail, which is really rare for one of these Tyco units. And with the directional lighting, it's another thing that makes me think someone actually cared about this unit, which is kind of rare for an old Tyco. And the other thing that makes me think someone cared about it, and the whole reason I bought this engine, is someone actually replaced the rivets on the front motor truck with bolts. I don't know how exactly they did this or why, but most of why I bought this thing is so I could dig in, figure out how they did this, and see if I want to go about this on some of my other Mantua units I want to keep long term. That's enough of me rambling for now though, so I'm going to get to work, and I just want to start off nice and simple with this rear truck. I'm just going to clean off these wheels, give it some fresh oil, and hopefully that part of this thing should be done, because as we saw, this thing has some pickup issues. Okay, that rear truck is done, and now I don't have to worry about that. So now I can focus fully on the front truck. It looks like this is as far out of the body as the motor truck wants to go. I can't really move it that much more, and I don't really want to remove the lighting in here because that seems like a hassle. And it looks like the way this was installed is it has a bolt on both sides to hold just one long bar in, which kind of seems weird and I don't really like it. If possible, I kind of want to see if I can tap in a screw of some sort. I just think that would hold much better, and it would be less annoying to take apart. You could just use a screwdriver instead of having to fight this. I've got this front truck disassembled as much as I can, and I don't see anything wrong in here. Everything just looks like it'll need a bit of a cleanup, which is something I can do pretty easily. I still do want to see, before I do that and go putting this thing back together, if I've got any screws that I can tap straight into here, but that's something I'll find out. If not, I'll just throw these things back in, because they aren't the worst in the world, but I would like to replace them with actual screws. So, time to clean all the parts. I'm going to start with the motor itself, then move on to this base, then I'll deal with the axles, and then I'll deal with these brass things here that hold the wheels in. Don't know why Tycos have those, but I'm leaving them there because it seems like an essential part of them. I was wrong about there being no problems. I found one that's kind of big that I'm going to have to deal with. This brush is not making very good contact with this little, I guess you would call it a spring here, and the spring keeps moving on me. So I don't know what I'm going to do about this. I'm going to go off camera for a brief bit, see if I can figure this out. If not, I might have to come up with some sort of creative solution or something. It's now a bit of time later, and I've managed to solve the problem. I just replaced it with a new plate. I just soldered this wire back on, and that was it. This now has a lot stronger of a push on the brushes, so they make much better contact, and it seems to work perfectly fine. This old plate, I found it was just kind of odd. This piece here, which is supposed to be the thing that holds the brush in place, see if it wants to focus on this. It's just kind of loose. It was not really doing its job, and I just didn't trust it. I had a spare, so I just replaced it, and it was not that bad. Plus, I was not a huge fan of the wiring originally, and now I think it looks a little bit better. I also discovered while doing that this motor is in really, really good shape. I was considering swapping it for a neodymium magnet, but it seems to be pretty strong. I actually found a railroad spike, I believe, just one of these little guys, railroad nail, whatever you want to call it, and it's really strong. So I'm gonna leave that alone. It doesn't feel really weak, so I don't need to swap it, which is good. Now, back to the regular maintenance. Perfect. Every single component in here has been cleaned up. The only real note I have is it looks like at some point in its history this engine was over lubricated, so there was a lot of dried oil and stuff in here, but it's not the worst I've ever seen. So now it's time for me to get out some more tools and we can start putting this thing back together. After a little bit of a fight, this locomotive is fully back together. It is time to see if all my work has paid off. So, it's now time for a test run. I'll give this thing some power. It looks like I've wired up the lighting wrong. But other than that, this thing runs really well. So I'm going to call this restoration a success. I'm going to fix that lighting off camera, but for now, this is good.